Bobby here, and in this tutorial we're going to learn 15 essential blues licks. We're going to learn them in the context of a 12-bar blues solo. It's a shuffle groove in the good old-fashioned key of A, the people's favourite. We're going to be going around the 12-bar blues progression twice. Once around the 12-bar blues progression in the blues is often known as a chorus. Sometimes it's known as a verse. The terms verse and chorus are used interchangeably in the blues. All of the licks in a solo are extremely usable. They are licks that you can just learn and throw into your own playing next time you find yourself at a jam night. So it's all kind of useful, kind of tasteful stuff. And as well as learning the solo, we're going to learn the rhythm guitar part. And again, this is a very useful and usable rhythm guitar part that you can use next time you're at a blues jam to accompany other musicians. So it's assumed that you have some prior knowledge of the fundamental techniques such as string bending, vibrato, perhaps some knowledge of the scales we're going to use. Now we're going to be using blues tonality in the key of A, and by that I mean essentially it's the overlay of the A minor pentatonic and the A major pentatonic scale. If I lose you with any of that terminology and even the fundamental techniques of string bending and vibrato and slides, if you go to absolutebluesguitar.com, we have a full course that takes you from having never before picked up a guitar to being able to play good blues in a short space of time. So that's well worth checking out. That's got full HD video lessons, backing tracks, tabs, standard notation, fretboard diagrams, you name it, everything you need to get playing the blues straight away. So that will be covered, but I'll try my best also to break down all of the licks note for note so I don't leave anything out for you. So without further ado, let's get tuned up, and we're actually going to start by learning the rhythm guitar part before we move on to the solo. So the rhythm guitar part is a simple 12-bar blues shuffle in the key of A. If you're already familiar with playing these 12-bar blues forms, and if you're confident that you actually picked up the chord shapes I was using just by watching that playthrough, then by all means go ahead and start getting into the actual lick tutorial. But for those of you who are new to this, we're following a typical 12-bar blues. So by that I mean, you know, breaking it down in a simpler form. We have 3, 4 bars of A, 2 bars of D, followed by 2 bars of A, talking and playing at the same time. 1 bar of E, 1 bar of D, 1 bar of A, and a little turnaround at the end. Now sorry, that was a little bit sloppy, but I was talking and playing at the same time. But I was just playing that in a kind of simple, that typical kind of Jimmy Reed, I say typical, it's great and effective, but that kind of Jimmy Reed style blues riff that you've probably heard. So our A is our 1 chord, our D is our 4 chord, and our E is our 5 chord. You will hear 12-bar blues forms described in that way, 1, 4 and 5, and it's just the number system is used just so you can take this information and you can apply it to other keys, rather than saying A, D and E, you know, we'd say 1, 4 and 5. So a lot of blues harmony is based around 7th chords, so instead of just playing standard A, D and E, we're actually playing A7, D7 and E7, and in this case I'm actually substituting chords further. So instead of playing an A7 for our 1 chord, I'm actually playing this A6 shape. In a 12-bar blues of this style, the 1 chord could either be a dominant 7th, it could be a 9th, it could be a 6th, which I'm playing. In this case, it could be a 13. Some might argue that this 6th shape I'm playing is a 13. Now, if that theory is beyond you, don't worry about it at this stage. It's just that a 6 and a 13 is the same interval. That's all you need to know at this stage. So you may be familiar with this F shape. And what I'm doing, I'm basing this chord around this first position F shape, but I'm shifting it up to the 5th fret. So in other words, I've got this partial bar across the 5th fret on the top 2 strings, and then 6 on the G, 7 on the D, and then I put my little finger on 7 on the B string, and I bring the thumb over the top of the neck to fret that A note, but I'm not actually playing it in this figure. And the rhythm guitar pattern is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So I'm just playing stabs, and they are occurring on the 1, 2, and the 2 and of the beat. So 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. So we're hitting the chord, and we're lifting the fingers off of the fretboard immediately afterwards to give it that really short kind of percussive stab. 1, 2, 3, 4. And our 4 chord, instead of being a standard D or even a D7, it's actually a D9. I'm barring across the top 3 strings on the 5th fret with my 3rd finger, and then with my 1st finger, that's on 4 on the D string, and then my 2nd finger is on the 5th fret on the A string, and it's the same rhythm, so it's putting them all together at the moment. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, A6, our 1 chord. We do that for 4 bars, and then we go to our 4 chord, which is our D9 for 2 bars, and then back to A, A6, and then we go to E9 just for 1 bar, and it's the same figure as we played for the D9, except we move it up 2 frets. So E9, 1 bar, D9, back to A6, and then we've got this little, it's not a full turnaround, it's just a kind of tag at the end of the bar. Some people would call this a turnaround. The whole turnaround concept in the blues is a little bit more involved than this, but I would call that turnaround. So what that is, it's the same figure, it's the same chord shape, but we're playing an F9, so that's the same figure that we played for E9. So we just move up 1 fret, and then we move it back down. So in other words, our root note is on the 8th fret, and then down to the 7th fret. So I'll just play the whole 12-bar blues sequence unaccompanied. So we'll start with this this A6 shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, A. I'll call it 1. This is our 1 chord. 4 bars. 4 chord for 2 bars. Back to our 1 chord for 2 bars. Then our 5 chord for 1 bar. 4, 1, and then our little turnaround. So that's a very useful rhythm guitar figure that you can use at a jam night, that will just give you a bit more space, and you can really kind of sit in the pocket with the rest of the band. So I'm sure you're all itching to get on to learning the licks in the solo, so we'll move on to that now. now it's time to learn the 15 licks in the solo, and I would strongly recommend that you listen to the solo as many times as you can to really internalize the phrasing. It's going to make a lot more sense if you've just listened to it a bunch of times, so you can start to kind of hear where I'm going, so you're familiar with the phrases. I say this to all of my students, but in order to play the blues, you need to hear the blues, and in order to hear it, you need to listen to a lot of it. So, you know, it's worthwhile putting together a playlist of your favorite blues songs and just listening to it everywhere you go, and you'll really start to internalize the style. As Jimi Hendrix famously said, the blues is easy to play but hard to feel. Now I'm probably paraphrasing a little bit. In fact, it may be a quote attributed to somebody else and not Jimmy, but it's a famous phrase, and it's very true. You know, a lot of people think that the blues is an easy style of music to play because we're limited to the scale choices and note choices, but it's all about the phrasing. It's all about things like call and response and question and answer phrasing, of which there are lots of licks of that style in this solo. There's a lot of repetition because you really want to, when you're phrasing and when you're playing a lick, you really want to hook the listener. So you don't just want to be running up the scale and playing a bunch of, you know, random notes. And in actual fact, while we're on the subject of scales, as I mentioned in the intro, most of our tonality is coming from the A minor pentatonic scale, and the A major pentatonic scale, and it's the overlay of the two harmonies. Now, each of those scales has 5 positions. If you're familiar with the cage system, it has 5 positions over the neck, which is beyond the remit of this tutorial. But if you're looking to absorb that information and to find out about the scales and to learn the scales, then it's all available on the website, absolutebluesguitar.com. We've got full tutorials and fretboard diagrams of all the scales you're ever going to need to play the blues. So you may see me sneaking into different positions, but most of my notes will be coming from these 2 scales combined. However, there will be some chord tone ideas. Now, again, we've got a really deep subject on chord tones on the website. But chord tones are essentially playing the notes in the chords that we happen to be playing over. So I'm not just picking random notes from these 2 scales. My note choice will change depending on which chord I happen to be soloing over. So I might be choosing different notes on the 1 chord, different notes on the 4 chord that aren't technically in this scale framework, you know, really highlighting the notes in that chord, the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, and the same for the 5 chord. So it's known in jazz circles as playing the changes, and it just gives you more sophistication in your note choices while still sounding bluesy. Now, if that goes over your head, it's all explained on the website, but I thought I'd get that out of the way before we break down the solo. So we're going to start with lick number 1. So lick number 1 slowly. 1, 2, 3. So it's a very common blues run-in or lead-in to play this kind of figure. So that's 5, hammer onto 6 on the G. Then we've got this partial bar with our first finger on the 5th fret. So that's 5 on the B, 5 on the high E. And then we have this grace note slide from 8 to 10 on the B string. So a grace note is where you play 2 notes pretty much in the space of where you play 1 note. So it's just a quick slide. We give it some vibrato, and then we pull off to 8, back on to 10. So, and then we have this another grace note from 8 to 9 on the high E string. And what that's doing, that's a chord tone. I'm actually highlighting the 3rd of the chord there for your theory buffs among you. 1, 2, 3. And you may see me applying hybrid picking, and by that I mean I'm using the pick and the fingers combined. I'm not going to break that down because it sounds equally effective just picking or just with fingers, and it's just my personal style, and I've never really kind of broken it down. It's something that kind of just occurs naturally and happens randomly. So look out for that. I generally tend to kind of snap that high E string, not snap it in half, but just, you know, play it with my middle finger just to give it that percussive snap. So let's look at lick number 2. So lick number 2, 1, 2, 3. It starts the same as lick number 1. It's that lead in. So 1, 2, 3. So it's just this little tag at the end. So if we get as far as this, you should know this, and then we go to 10, pull off to 8 on the B, and then we have this grace note slide again from 9 down to 7 on the G, and then we pick up this double stop. So that's first finger on the 5th fret on the B string, and second finger on the 6th fret on the G, but we're approaching it from 1 fret below, so we slide into it. And what I'm doing there, chord tone wise, I'm actually highlighting the 3rd and the 5th of the 1 chord. All of this harmony at the moment is taking place over the 1 chord. So putting those 2 licks together, you'll start to see what I meant about repetition and call and response, and this happens all the time in blues. So we've got 2 quite similar sounding licks, but if this is a musical question, lick number 1, 1, 2, 3. Lick number 2 is a musical answer or a musical response, and that happens, as I say, all the time in blues. You'll get licks that will repeat, and there'll be a variation on each lick, and don't stray away from that in your phrasing. That is really the essence of blues, and a very musical way to solo regardless of the style of music you play. So let's move on to lick number 3 now. So lick number 3 slowly, 1, 2, 3. So all our harmony is now taking place over the 4 chord, and I'm highlighting chord tones within this D9 chord. So it's 1, 2, 3. So we start on the 5th fret of the B string, and we have this grace note slide from 6 up to 7 on the B, and then up to 5 on the E, and then 7, 5 on the high E string. Actually, I do that with my second finger. So it's that rhythm. And then we have this kind of hammer-on pull-off lick, this little roll. So that's all on the high E string. 7, hammer on to 8, pull off to 7, pull off to 5, and then 7 on the B, back to 5 on the high E, and then hammer to 7. Lick number 4 is just a very common blues bend, quite an aggressive. So that's, we're bending up on the 8th fret, bending up a whole step, snapping it, hopefully not in half, but snapping it with the middle finger. That's on the 8th fret. Playing 8 again on the high E, but teasing it slightly sharp, and then landing on 5 on the high E string and just giving it some vibrato. And then we top it off with which is a little double stop. So that's a partial bar between, so 7 on the G, 7, and then this figure again, this double stop figure. So it's 5 on the B, 6 on the G, but we approach it from 1 fret below. So that's just a very kind of punchy, you know, almost where rhythm and lead guitar cross over. You get a lot of double stops in the blues that really kind of help punctuate your solos. So lick number 5, 1, 2, 3. So this is where our 5 chord occurs for the first time. And again, I'm really playing into the harmony of that chord. So it's 7 on the A string, 4 to 7 on the D, back to 7 on the A. Then I have this grace note slide. You'll get a lot of grace note slides in the blues. Very expressive way to play. So it's 3 grace note slide to 4, and then 7 on the D. This is all on the D. And then that's 5 on the G, but you want to tease that slightly sharp to get that blue note. And then 7 on the D. So putting it all together, it's 1, 2, 3. Lick number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is a real triplet style lick, and we're in this. We're in the A blues scale box. So we want to bend on the G string on the 7th fret, bend up the whole step, and then we've got this partial bar again. That's 5 B, 5 high E, and then it's 8 on the B, pull off to 5, and then we have this. This is our flat 5th. That's 8 on the G, pull off to 7, pull off to 5, back to 7 on the G. So we've got, and then we pick up this double stop again. This happens quite a lot. I think on the playthrough I might have just played the one note, but I probably meant to do this. So that's 5 B, 6 G, but we pick it up from, we approach it from 1 fret below, and then back to our root note, which is 7 on the D string. We actually play that twice, so because that sets us up for lick number 7. So lick number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that's a very typical blues turnaround. Now that is a proper turnaround. I mentioned turnarounds earlier. So it's you want to anchor your 4th finger on the 5th fret on the high E string. Just leave it there, and we're walking down on the D string. So we've got 5. This is where some hybrid picking comes in handy. So 5D, 5 high E, 4D, 5 high E, 3D, 5 high E. So, and then down to 2 on the D. And then we're just playing the chords that we played on the rhythm guitar part. So F9 down to E9. If you skip the rhythm guitar part and you're unsure of those chord shapes, then just go back and learn that. So that's our first chorus. That's our first 12-bar section, giving us 7 licks. Let's move on to chorus 2 now and lick number 8. Lick number 8. 1, 2, 3. So lick number 8 moves into what a lot of people refer to as the BB box or the BB King box. It's a place on the neck where we haven't strayed from the tonality of the major and minor pentatonic scales. We're still using legitimate notes within those scales, but it's an area in the neck that BB was famously known to spend a lot of time and get a lot of mileage and expression out in his playing. And you'll find that you get a lot of mixture of major and minor tonality in this area of the neck. Now, again, it's beyond the remit of this tutorial to fully explain the BB box, but it is covered on the website, absolutebluesguitar.com. I know I keep plugging the site, but the information is there. We have a grace note slide on the G string from 9 to 11, and then we're kind of rocking back between 11G and 10B. So it's 11, 10, 11, 10 on the G and B strings. And then we want to hit that a bunch of times. 1, 2, 3, that's 10 on the B. And then it's 11G back to 10B. So that rhythm, 1, 2, 3. And then we have this kind of partial bend. So you want to get your first finger on 12 on the high E and your second finger on 13 on the B. And you're teasing the B string, leaving the high E string where it is, but teasing the B string slightly sharp for this double stop. So, and then we punctuate it with this chord, which is a voicing for an A9 chord. And what that is, I'll walk you through it one finger at a time. So first finger on the 14th fret on the B, second finger on the 16th fret on the G, third finger on the 17th fret on the D string, and fourth finger on 17 on the high E. So that's the Freddie King chord. You may have heard that shape. It's just playing it in A. So we just strike it and slide it down. Lick number 9. 1, 2, 3. Now, I did say there's a lot of repetition in the blues, and this is a very good example. This phrase starts the same as the previous phrase. So those, up until that point, it's exactly the same. I don't need to break that down again for you, hopefully. And then we move into this other part of the BB box. So that's 12, 10 on the high E. And then we bend. You can bend a half step or a whole step. I think I bent a half step, but it's going to be in key on this particular note over the one chord. So that's 12 on the B string, bend up a half step, and then 12 on the B, unbent, back to 10 on the B, and then a hammer on back to 12 again. So lick number 10. We're in the BB box again, and we approach it the same way as we did for the previous two licks. So that's 11 on the G, 10 B, and then that's 12 on the high E, bend up a whole step, and then back to 12, unbent on the E, and then we want to hit 10 on the B string twice, and then that's 11 G, 10 B, and then we have this. So that's 13 on the B, but just tease it slightly sharp, and then 10 to 12 on the high E, and then bend, it's a whole step this time, 12 on the B, 10 on the B, so, and then that's 12, high E, and then 10 twice on the B string, so. So once again, just to reiterate, if the licks sound odd to you out of context, go back and listen to the solo a bunch of times just to, you know, really kind of internalize the phrasing. So lick number 11, 3, 4, 1. It's quite a long one. And it's quite a lot of movement. So this is all mainly based around the A minor pentatonic scale, but with a major third thrown in, because harmonically we're playing on the one chord tones again. So it's a grace note hammer, and this happens a couple of times, from 8 to 10 on the B string, and then pulling off again to 8. And then we have this almost immediate grace note slide from 9 down to 7 on the G. And then we pick up this famous double stop again. So it's 4, B, 5, G, and then slide up. It's not a grace note this time, it's actually in that rhythm. So slide up 1 fret. And then 7 on the D string, and then we have this almost immediate grace note slide once more on the A string, and it's 7 down to 5, and then 3, and a grace note hammer to our major third, which is on 4 on the A string. So putting it all together very slowly: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and lick number 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. So at this point in the solo, we're approaching, or we're playing over our 5 chord. So we're really playing into the harmony and the chord tones of that chord. So we start with 5 on the B, and we have again a grace note slide from 8 to 9 on the B, and then that's 7 to 9 on the E string, and then we have this, that's 8 to 9 again on a B. It's not a grace note this time, and then 9 on the G. The fingering's a little bit weird. Again, I'll leave the fingering up to you. I'm going, you know, I'm kind of jumping the fingers over each other because it's a bit of a position shift. But that really highlights the 5 chord that's happening at this point. So lick number 13. Very similar to the previous lick, and very similar to a lick we looked at in the first chorus. Slight difference here, there's a double stop in there. So, which is a very kind of T-Bone Walker type thing, or a Chuck Berry thing even. So that's 5 on the B, and then we've got a grace note slide from 6 to 7 on the B, and then 5 high E, and then that's 7 back to 5, and then we have this really nasty, I love this just screams blues to me. That's 7 on the B and 8 on the high E, and you want to tease them both slightly sharp before going back to 5 on the high E. So, and then we have this grace note slide again from 6 to 7 on the B, and then finishing off with our root note 5 on the high E string. Lick number 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So lick number 14 is another turnaround lick, and this is heavily inspired by B.B. King. play it a little bit slower. 3, 4, 1. So that's 5 slide to 6 on the G, and then that's 5, 7 on the B, back to 5 on the B, and then we have the same rhythm. That's 6 slide to 7 on the B, and then that's 5, 7 on the high E. And then that's 5 on the high E again, but you want to hit that twice. And then we finish it with, at this point, the backing track is doing this, so we're going into our 5 chord. So we're actually finishing on this E note, which is the root of our 5 chord. So that's 8 on the B string, T's that slightly sharp, and then to 5 on the B. Lick number 15. That is a legitimate blues lick, as simple as it sounds. It's just one note, but it's probably one of the most famous blues licks. It's a B.B. King trademark. It's something that he used really effectively to punctuate phrases, and what it involves, there's no vibrato or anything. You just take the highest root note, in this case A, because we're in the key of A, but if he was in the key of C, he'd be playing a C note, and you rake into it. I'm grabbing it here on the 17th fret on the high E, and I'm raking into it, and then you just slide down, no vibrato, so it's not this, it's, and just let it drop, and you can actually hear the frets. So what I'm doing, I'm raking into it, I'm actually muting the strings I don't need with the fleshy part of my second finger, so you can really give it a good old rake, and the only note you want to sound is the 17th fret on the high E. Just let it drop. That's lick number 15. One note, simple and effective. So there you have it, 15 essential blues licks. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial and you found some useful licks that you can incorporate into your own playing next time you're at a jam night. Now, we have a full blues course over at absolutebluesguitar.com, and here's a quick word about it so you can find out more. Cheers guys, I'll see you next time. If you've ever wanted to play the blues with all the emotion of your favourite guitarists, or if you're keen to join in a jam night and just need a bit more confidence, Absolute Blues Guitar has you covered. We offer an immersive course, and whether you're a beginner or an experienced player, we're committed to making an authentic blues guitarist out of you. Everything we teach is broken down note for note, written out in tab and standard notation, and accompanied by high quality backing tracks. We give you all the tools you need to play classic blues and beyond. There really is nothing missing. My name's Bobby Harrison, I'll be your teacher, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you inside. Here's a brief taste of what you can expect to learn from our course. We hope you enjoyed this preview. Let's start playing some real blues.